Western Australia was declared a penal settlement in 1849, and the first convict transport ship arrived in June 1850. The convict system was based in Fremantle, around which smaller convict hiring depots operated. Upon arrival, prisoners could be initially classified as probationary convicts, labouring in gangs on public works while under guard. Well-behaved men were granted a ticket of leave and could work for wages. They were sent to a hiring depot to find employment, where the convict was expected to support himself. If he became unemployed, he then returned to the depot to be fed and housed. After good behaviour, a ticket of leave holder could receive a conditional pardon, and when the full sentence had been served, he became an expiree. The convict system was administered by military personnel from the Corps of Royal Engineers. In 1851, the 20th Company of Royal Engineers arrived at Fremantle, comprising 95 sappers and miners. Their task was to supervise and instruct convicts. Second Lieutenant Edmund Frederick Duquesne was given the task of overseeing the Eastern District, where he would be responsible for the setting up of the convict hiring depots of Guildford, York and Toodyay. At Toodyay, the convict depot was first established in August 1851 at the original Toodyay Township. Within a few months, the depot relocated to a larger site upriver and was mainly completed by 1855. Around 1,100 retired British soldiers, known as Enrolled Pensioner Guards, migrated to Western Australia during the convict era. These men had volunteered as guards on the transport ships in response to an offer of a plot of land. A number of these men then became warders in charge of convicts. 13 allotments were marked out near the Toodyay depot, and a group of two-roomed brick cottages was erected. They became known as the Pensioner Village. By 1856, public debt in the colony was high, and the York and Toodyay convict hiring depots were downgraded to save money. Only 3 caretaker staff remained. In 1860, part of the depot site was resumed for the establishment of a new Avon Valley township named Newcastle. The colonial police relocated from Toodyay to the higher ground at the depot and took over some of the depot buildings. Early colonial policemen were recruited by magistrates and worked part-time. Their duties were wide-ranging. When convicts started arriving in the colony, the police also took on the role of registering and supervising the ticket of leave men. The management of justice was the responsibility of the colonial government. Resident magistrates were often settlers of good standing with no formal legal training. Their duties were administrative, as well as dealing with minor infringements by convicts and free settlers. By this time, Britain's penal system was gradually reforming. A higher proportion of serious offenders were being transported, and the numbers of probationary convicts increased compared to ticket of leavers. In 1862, some regional convict depots, including Toodyay, were reopened to receive both classes of convicts, who were kept segregated. Attendance by convicts at daily religious services was compulsory, as it was felt religion was the best way to turn them away from the evils of crime. Fewer resources, however, were expended on their medical care. While an infirmary was built at each of the regional depots, only a comparatively small amount of money was actually spent on medicines or equipment. In 1868, the last convict ship docked at Fremantle, and 4 years later the Toodyay Convict Depot closed for the final time. Pensioner guards and their families had been willing settlers, and they became well integrated into the community. Remnants of the pensioner village are still visible today. As for the convicts, following their release, men with skills could find employment locally. Most, however, had to settle for seasonal farming or unskilled work, and led a nomadic and lonely life on the fringes of respectable society. Over the years, the Toodyay Convict Depot buildings were adapted for other purposes. By the 20th century, many of them had fallen into poor repair. Newcastle was renamed Toodyay, and Toodyay became West Toodyay, and the depot buildings were progressively demolished. Traces of some of these buildings, however, were not completely eradicated. In 2014, the archaeological remains of the central area of the Toodyay Convict Depot were State Heritage listed. Surviving today, adjacent to the central depot area, is the Newcastle Jail. It was built by probationary convicts and handed over to the colonial police in 1865.